these purple lines. I'm not really sure why I'm still in both of these trades. I held and just couldn't put myself to hit the sell button when I was so negative. Alright, so you just saw a clip of me trading on February 11th. Today is the 14th, it's Valentine's Day. On the 11th, I had my biggest loss so far, and that entire video was about 2 hours long, and I didn't want to upload that entire video. Instead, I kind of wanted to just review what happened that day so that I could kind of just soak in what happened and just learn from the experience. Because there was a lot of stuff that went wrong all at the same time, and just multiple things went wrong. It's not that I necessarily did one specific thing wrong, but it was a culmination of a lot of wrong things. So um, I'm gonna kind of just play this video. This is just the recording of that day. So I'm gonna just play this video and then narrate on top. So I'm gonna try and just do basically a play-by-play. And I was in on NAKD. I had a total of 375 shares, so that was a $750 position that I had on there, and I stacked that position. So each of these trades was $250, equaling a total of $750 in this single position with 375 shares. I got in at this candle roughly. The excuse me, the purple line is my entry, and I wrote it up. I missed an opportunity right here to sell for about $25, and immediately after that it dipped. I stayed in because of this giant wick, these series of giant wicks in combination with this green candle. It looked to me like just a standard dip, except I held and it continued to dip. So I want to kind of break this down and, like I said, give a play-by-play. But one of the first things that I didn't do was I didn't check macro. Okay, so I just wanted to pull up the chart for the S&P 500 on Thursday while I was trading. I looked at my NAKD trade and I got in at about 9:33, which is here on the time scale, on the time axis. So 9:33 puts it right here at the bottom, of this dip. So I caught the S&P as it was going up, and my trade initially went up, but almost immediately after I entered that trade, it went down. It took a huge dip, and this is what I'm narrating what I did in my trade, but this is exactly what the S&P did as well as a whole. And sure enough, I held, and it took another massive dip on me. So my trade almost mimicked the S&P verbatim. That's not so much of the issue here. Granted, I do need to look at the S&P and make sure that I'm aware of what's happening on the macro scale, because if everything is tanking, then I need to just take that as a sign and possibly not even trade that day. I'm looking at all my stocks here and I see Zoom is looking like it's gonna rip. I see Naked over there on the right, the top right corner. But going back to macro, what I wasn't aware of at the time was that Naked and all of the weed stocks had turned into meme stocks. So the whole Reddit community and all of the retail traders that were involved in the GameStop spike, the same thing happened. Everybody kind of shifted from GameStop and AMC and shifted over and started buying weed stocks. And I wasn't aware of this. It's more or less a pump and dump, and I wasn't aware that this pump and dump was going on, and I caught it at the very moment that it started to dump. So the lesson here is that I need to pay attention to the news, because if I had just read the news, I would have saw that there was an actual negative news catalyst on all weed stocks because of this. So the fact that I wasn't aware that that news was out there, I was already at a disadvantage just going into that day trading, not knowing that. Um, so again, I got to pay attention to macro. I got to look at the S&P 500 every day before I trade. And it wouldn't be a bad idea to jump over to that and just check what it's doing before I enter each individual trade to see if the market had shifted up or down at that moment in time. Kind of shifting gears here, but I want to talk about my strategy and what went wrong with my strategy. So I've only been trading for 6 weeks now. The first 1 to 2 weeks I was just learning the mechanics and the motions and how to actually place trades. You can even see in one of my videos I'm actually sweating and getting super nervous during one of my trades. And at that point I was still learning the program, how to do this stuff. I've been doing it for a few weeks now and I'm more comfortable in the program, and I had a strategy, but that strategy wasn't working. So I had to take a week off and reassess what my goals were and figure out what I needed to do to make a working strategy. So I figured out what I needed to do to make a working strategy, and this week was the week that I more or less tested that strategy. And my first mistake is that I was testing this strategy with large position sizes. Now, I'm going to argue that I needed to do that because I wanted to see what the upper limits of my profitability was with the amount of money that I was able to trade with, the maximum amount of money I was able to trade with, if that makes any sense. So I wanted to put my limit to the test on how much I could spend and how much I could make spending that much money. And once I could figure out the max range of what I could make, then I could safely place trades according to that maximum level. So just like if you're trying to work out and you want to figure out what your max bench press is, you got to lift as much as you possibly can to see, and it's eventually just your arms are gonna give out and you're gonna have to get a spotter and it's gonna drop back down on you. So I was doing that with my account, more or less. I was doing a max out set to see what my maximum profitability was. That being said, I was all in on 2 of these positions. On NAKD, I was all in. I had $750 on that trade. And on, I believe it was AEZS, I was all in on all of my positions. And I was trying to max out what my profitability was. And I was aware that doing that was also going to increase my risk, but I wasn't aware that I was in a position where I was vulnerable to an extreme risk for a couple of different reasons. I'm going to actually pause the video here because I'm looking at the Zoom chart. And at first, and this is completely my fault. I have all these charts over here. I have the 12 chart, the 9 chart, the double chart, the quad chart, the single chart level 2, and the triple chart level 2. So I have that many different charts. When I first, do my pre-market setup, I'll open the 12 chart quick view and find stocks that I'm interested in, and then I'll jump to either the single chart level 2 or the triple chart level 2 and start trading depending on how many I want to trade at that time. So if I see something on the 12 chart, I'll jump over to my single big chart and analyze it to see what's going on. And this is the single big chart that you see in front of you. I was looking at this thinking that I was looking at the chart for NAKD. I didn't realize that I was looking at the Zoom chart. This is an error that I started with early on that I didn't even realize until later. So I made decisions based off of this chart on a different stock. I was looking at the wrong ticker. And I ended up trading on Naked thinking that this is what the chart was. So my decisions were off because I wasn't looking at the right candles. I know I'm kind of beating a dead horse right here, but it made a huge difference because this chart is why I decided to stay in for so long. So I thought that this would be a good buy to hold and just ride for a day or so, see how far up it would go. And that really hurt me because when I started trading, I was trading basing my decisions off of that chart. So that was totally my mistake. There were some other things that I did wrong as well. So another thing that I wanted to talk about was how I'm always trading while I'm distracted or multitasking. And this is a habit that I really need to get rid of because in this video alone, I watched myself eat toast, talk on Discord, play a game of Apex, and just I'm all over the place. I'm not paying attention to the actual candles when I enter trades. Here I'm looking at a worksheet, filling out numbers on a worksheet. And granted, this is to help me track my trades, but in all reality, I have a program that tracks them for me, and I can just pull up the monitor tab and look at my trades. I don't have to log them on paper while I'm actively trading. So a new rule for myself to help with my focus and stop distracting myself is I'm not going to use the worksheets anymore. I'll use the worksheets to set out my daily buying power and calculate that, but I'm not going to actively fill that in while I'm trading. What I'll do is I'll just keep all of my position sizes the same, and that way I'll know how much money I've put in. I think that might work, but we'll see. But anyways, point being is just don't trade while you're distracted and stop multitasking. Focus on your trading and focus on open trades specifically. Actually, these are the candles that I thought it was going to reverse on. I thought it was going to reverse on this candle and it dipped on me, and that's the point where I held and I should have sold. So this is a very critical moment in this trade. As soon as that dipped that far, I should have sold. No, not that far. VWAP. Once it crossed VWAP, I should have sold. Yep, right there is where I should have sold. So note to self, if you're moving up and it suddenly dips to VWAP, that's clear sign to dip out. This is a really critical moment where I decided to hold and I shouldn't have. And this was a false reversal as well. So the lessons for week 6 are always check macro. Before I trade and before I enter every trade, check macro to see whether or not it's going up or going down. And then that will help me make a better, more educated decision on whether or not I should hold a trade or not hold a trade. Lesson number 2, never underestimate the power of news. And that goes for good news or bad news. I've seen good news jump stocks up into hyperparabolic rips, and I've experienced a massive dip. And I could have closed out a $25 green trade and ended up $277 red on it. So rule number 3 is clearly define each trade before you enter it. And a good example here is at this point, That line just dipped below my stop loss line. I actually had this trade completely planned out. The pink line is where I entered, the green line is my target, and the red line is my stop loss right there. It just dipped below my stop loss, but I held because that wick was so large and the candle started to reverse. Regardless, if I have a stop loss line and it dips below that stop loss, then I need to get out. Period. I also need to clearly define the stop loss point before I enter the trade. So I need to have all three of these lines drawn before I enter each trade. So lesson number 4 is focus on trading. Stop multitasking. Stop worrying about narrating for YouTube. Stop getting on Discord and talking. Stop eating toast. If I'm in an open trade, that open trade gets 150% of my attention with my fingers hovering over the buy and sell, because I watched myself in this video at 3 different times where I could have come out positive, ended up with a $300 negative day when I could have ended up with a $50 positive day if I had executed properly. So those are my lessons. It was a rough week, but I'm testing a new strategy out, and once I refine this new strategy, and I've yet to do that, but once I refine this new strategy and set clear conditions, then I think that this is really going to help, and I'm not really going to allow this negative day to carry over into my trading. So I'm gonna leave on that note.